The story of the anime begins with Haruki Nakano, a normal young man who lives with his 4 sisters. Suddenly one morning he wakes up to the sound of his alarm clock, having slept while helping his younger sister Yoi study. At one point Yuzuki and Satsuki, who are the younger sisters, enter the room and ask Haruki to help wake up Yoi, who is sleeping. To do so, the younger sisters start shooting at him, causing Haruki to accidentally touch Yoi, causing her to wake up. Yoi, after waking up, shoots Haruki. After this, Matsuki, the oldest sister of all, enters and shoots Yoi and Haruki because of the scandal. To end the fight, she tries to call her mother, which makes them stop immediately as they are afraid that their mother will take their permission. Then we see Haruki getting ready in the bathroom to go study, while his sisters insist that they get ready first. Finally, the episode ends with the 4 sisters leaving their house to go to their respective schools. One night Haruki is watching a horror movie when he notices some eyes staring at him from outside the door, which scares him a lot. In the next scene we see Yoi changing and he notices the exact same eyes as before. When he looks through the door of his room he realizes that they are Yuzuki and Satsuki. The girls explain to him that they are working on a settlement about their family where they have to describe each of their relatives. Then Matsuki shows up and starts complaining, insisting that they should do their homework well. The girls come over and when they are done they start reading what they prepared. They start with Haruki, who mentions that he is the only boy in the family present, saying that he is a genius at video games, not athletic at all and scared. They then move on to Yoi, noting that she is good at sports, and end with Matsuki describing her as a great example for her sisters and an imposing figure good at studying and sports. At the end of the day, the girls return home from school happy and tell Haruki that they did the best on their homework. Another day after school, Haruki returns home and entering his room, he finds Matsuki sleeping in his bed dressed only in her uniform top and shield. Our protagonist tries to wake her up, but it is useless, so he decides to leave only when his sisters arrive. At that moment Matsuki wakes up and appears in her uniform, but it is quite noticeable that one of her shirts has fallen off. Haruki, trying to help her, pushes her to fix it, causing Yoi to misunderstand the situation and shoot him. After that Yoi goes out to play and Matsuki along with Yoi returns to change, leaving Haruki a bit confused and excited, feeling bad since he only tried to protect his older sister's image. At the end of the day Matsuki goes out to take a bath, and before going in Haruki gives her a towel, remembering a previous incident where she forgot her shirt and sent him to get it, but was seen by Yoi, who also got it. Afterwards Haruki returns to his room and sees Matsuki sitting on his bed reading a newspaper spread out only on the towel he gave her. He complicates her, but she tells him that she feels uncomfortable getting dressed after a bath, and that she plans to stay like that for a while, but she falls asleep. In this chapter we see all the family members shopping at the supermarket. Yoi suggests buying rice first and Haruki agrees, but not too much, and even though he has a hard time eating the rice he decides to eat it anyway. Afterwards Matsuki and the girls are attracted by a free sample and approach with adorable expressions to get some of these small samples. Matsuki apologizes for the girls' behavior, but she also agrees to try a sample. After that they visit various supermarkets one by one, trying what they offer, and in the end one of the salespeople offers some things to the girls. They realize that they still need to buy a curry, and even though Haruki likes spicy curry they decide to choose a spicy one, so that the girls can enjoy it without any problems. When they get home they prepare dinner and the girls have the impression that the dish might be spicy, but in the end they really like it because it is not spicy. We spend another day with Satsuki waiting for Haruki to get home. When he arrives the girl hands him a manga that they both read. Haruki asks if Satsuki should read it first or at the same time, but she prefers not to read it, so Haruki accepts her decision. Later he meets with Yuzuki and asks her if she will read this manga, but she says that she would not understand, so Haruki asks her to excuse his sister a little, but Yuzuki corrects him, mentioning that their teacher taught them not to do bad things while putting nearby thorns in Haruki's hair. In the end Satsuki finishes reading and the 2 girls go off to play, leaving Haruki with thorns in his hair. Later Satsuki wants to go inside the house, and when they go inside they turn off the television only when it's time to watch their favorite anime. Haruki warns the little girl to turn away from the screen for a bit, but she doesn't pay much attention to him. At that moment Ioi comes in and explains that when Satsuki is too focused on something that interests her she doesn't listen to anyone. Yuzuki also mentions that Satsuki knows when the anime she likes will air without even looking at the time. When the anime she was watching ends the girls go to play in her living room and we see the little girls having fun. Satsuki mentions that the promises she makes to her are very important. At the end of the day Satsuki continues watching the anime while Haruki is speechless and asks Yuzuki if he cares that his sister ignores him. Yuzuki replies that he won't do anything that his sister doesn't want him to. In the next chapter we realize that the exams are approaching and we see a worried Haruki entering his classroom where he finds Matsuki on his bed with a somewhat awkward pose. She tells him that she will teach him everything, but he dismisses it as a double meaning, saying that he can study on his own. Matsuki is sad and mentions that he also asked Yayoi to teach her. But it turns out that Yanoi has disappeared. However, we later see her studying in his classroom, and only then Yayoi takes the opportunity to ask him to teach her since he thinks she is a good teacher. Haruki agrees, but soon Haruki realizes that Yayoi does not understand anything he is teaching. He reviews the past exams and realizes that his sister's problem is multiplication. Haruki decides that Yayoi should write down all the multiplication tables on a sheet of paper so that she can practice the ones she fails. At that moment, the girls come to say goodbye because they are going to sleep, so the sisters wish Yayoi luck on the exam. However, the girls tell her that they did the best on the math exam, which makes Yayoi feel even worse. The next day, Yayoi returns home and tries to avoid Haruki when he asks her about the exam, causing him to suspect that she did poorly on the test. However, he stops her, and as they try to escape, they get separated and Haruki falls on top of his sister. But just then Matsuki appears, who sees them in the situation and calms down, thinking through an eradication that it was her fault for asking them to have more fun. One day inside the house, the girls are putting on their t-shirts. Yayoi asks them why they are wearing them and tells them that they had swimming class that day. This sparks interest in Yayoi, and she takes the opportunity to tell Matsuki that she really wants to go to the beach, but Matsuki explains that it is not the season to go yet. Despite this, Yayoi comes up with a good idea. Later, Haruki arrives home and finds it too hot. When he enters, he is surprised to find his sisters dressed in t-shirts. The situation is misinterpreted, and at that moment Yayoi attacks him and asks him to take a break, taking advantage of this to be happy with him for not going to the beach last year because he had to take entrance exams. Haruki tells her that this summer they can go, but Yayoi reminds him that it is now his turn to take his exams. After this, Haruki goes to his classroom, but Yayoi throws his t-shirt at him and forces him to change to go outside. Afterwards, the girls decide to use an inflatable polo shirt that they had when they were little. However, when they try it on, they realize that it no longer fits well because of how much they have grown. Despite this, they manage to find ways to have fun inside. When night falls, the girls return home and find the three siblings very cold. In this chapter, Satsuki is reading a manga about sisters who don't look alike at all, and since they don't look alike, they think they're not sisters. At that moment, Yuzuki enters and comments that she thinks she was adopted because if they really were sisters, they should look alike. Suddenly, Haruki appears in the room and notices that her sisters are very sad. Satsuki asks Haruki if he thinks she was adopted, and he spectacularly shows her a photo of Matsuki when she was little, and she looks exactly like her. Accepting that she wasn't adopted, Yuzuki begins to doubt because Haruki looks like her father, Yayoi looks like her mother, and the same with Satsuki and Matsuki, but she doesn't look like anyone else. Determined to find answers, Yuzuki goes to her parents' room in search of some proof. At that moment, Matsuki sees him very curious about the case, and when she enters the room, she shows him a photo of her grandmother who looks identical to Yuzuki. Just then, Yayoi enters looking sad and tells him that her levels are low again. She says that everyone gets good levels except her, and assures him that this means that she should be adopted since she is not as good at math as her brothers are. The next day, we see Yuzuki running to Haruki to hug him in a surprising way. Just at that moment, Satsuki also appears, and when she sees her sister, Satsuki asks her what she is doing with Yuzuki. Nervously, she answers that it is time for dinner and avoids explaining the moment. During dinner, Yuzuki sits next to Haruki, which causes him to suspect that she put something in his food. A little scared, he starts to eat, but notices that his food is in perfect condition, so he calms down. After finishing dinner, Haruki goes to his room to sleep, and upon entering, he finds Yuzuki, who asks him to read a story. Yuzuki, in a moment of sincerity, tells him that she loves him, which leaves Haruki very confused. At that moment, Satsuki appears and shows Haruki the anime she had watched the day before, in which a girl threw a toy at her brother. Satsuki explains that Yuzuki was doing the same thing, which frees Haruki. The next day, Yuzuki confirms that she was in fact playing with him. One night, Haruki wakes up to find Matsuki on top of him. Intrigued, he asks her why they were in this situation, and she explains that she needed to ask him a favor. She wants him to. Matsuki tells him that at school they were planning a party, and since no one wanted to play the princess, she accepted. But now she has to kiss the prince, and she has never kissed anyone. So she doesn't know how to do it, which is why she went looking for help. Just as they are about to kiss, Haruki reacts, pushing his sister out and telling her that they can't do that because they are siblings. Matsuki falls silent and leaves for his room. After a moment, Haruki feels that he shouldn't apologize for how he expressed himself, so he goes to her. However, Matsuki comes back holding the sling and tells him that there is actually no kissing scene because he mixed up the slings, which explains his earlier reaction. Another night, Haruki was sitting in front of Yaoi's room door, seeing her and asking for help because he feels bad, unable to go back to his room. Yaoi takes him to her room and tells him that she should rest because she has school the next day, although he doesn't agree to leave him alone when she agrees that she is very worried about her brother's current state. The next day, in the dining room, all the Sisters are gathered and the youngest asks about Haruki. Yaoi tells them that he is sick. Meanwhile, in Haruki's room, he tries to concentrate on not resting because he really needs to go to the bathroom, but he can't move and finally falls asleep. When he wakes up, he sees Yaoi taking care of him. Haruki thanks her for coming back. Yaoi tries to take care of him alone, and while she is taking off her dress to wipe off the sweat, all the other sisters unexpectedly arrive and see Haruki and Yaoi in a very compromising position, leading to misunderstandings. They start accusing Yaoi, who angrily leaves the room, trying to explain that before that she hit Haruki, who fell back on his bed in pain and still sick. In this chapter, the sisters are watching a very scary horror movie, while Haruki is playing video games. Yaoi surprisingly expresses that she wants to sleep with him. Haruki, thinking that his sister is sick, decides to take her to his room without worrying. On the way, he encounters the two little sisters who go to the bathroom and ask Haruki to watch them while they are there. Despite his initial reassurance, the little ones start crying, forcing him to agree, leaving Haruki frightened by their behavior. Later, Haruki returns to his room and notices Matsuki sleeping in his bathroom. When he tries to wake her up, she hugs him. At that moment, the other sisters enter the room and decide that they will sleep with him tonight. They all sit down in the four of them to sleep, and Haruki thinks that he doesn't mind the idea of everyone sleeping together sometimes. The next day, Haruki tells his sisters that they can count on him, but they ignore him, laughing that it is better not to watch scary things for a while, which explains why they decided to sleep with him. Later, in the OVA for this anime, all the characters went to a public bathroom where the little sisters got excited about drinking latte after washing up. To get them excited, their older sisters told them that they should sleep first. During this process, Ioha felt embarrassed about wearing a towel, and Mizuki, in a moment of embarrassment, quickly took the towel off her and ran with it in her hand, which caused a fight between them. Matsuki intervened to calm them down. Afterwards, everyone enjoyed taking a bath and then went into the hot pool. Meanwhile, Haruki was in his own intrusive thoughts, imagining funny scenarios with his sisters, despite reflecting on how hard it is for him to be excited in this situation. After leaving the public bathroom, the girls were excited to be able to drink their latte, but were disappointed to receive it in a box instead of a bottle. A lady at the store explained to them that they had changed the presentation. The girls, with their boxes of latte, decide that the next time they go out, they'll look for a place that offers coffee in bottles. Haruki notices Ioha drinking her latte and suddenly starts to have fun, comparing the size of her arm to Matsuki's. This makes Ioha cry, but despite the little fight, everyone ends up having a good time during the day. If you liked the video, subscribe and comment on an anime so I can bring you another summary. See you next time. See you later.